Hello guys, Yusaku here, and today we're going to be talking about some Yugioh Vrains episode 14. Now before we get into the stuff about the episode, some news came out, it was either earlier this morning or yesterday, that the director of Yugioh Everything has changed to someone who is formerly just an animation director, never had an actual directing job, like full-on directing a show type of thing. And if you want to find out more about this, go ahead and check out Dylan's channel over at Yugioh Everything. There's a link to it in the description below. I don't want to go into too much detail because I didn't find out until I saw his video, and then I just feel like I'm stealing from him. But either way, we already have started to see the impacts of that shift in this episode 14, in that the link summoning animation that we saw that was starting to get kind of annoying because it seemed like it was a little bit overdone sometimes, has shifted to be a lot more clean and fast, and in my opinion I liked it a lot more. When Emma managed to link summon one of her Altergeists in this episode, it was very quick. The arrowheads confirmed thing was all done without going into that weird, open-ended space that's similar to what you see if you've ever played any of the Tag Force games behind you while you're dueling. So it's a nice transition, and I think it could definitely make the show feel a lot more fluid and fast. At least that's the way I felt with this duel so far. So nothing super major yet. Hopefully the show stays just as good in terms of the writing as it has so far. I think most people are enjoying it as much as I am. I know personally I believe that it's one of the better written Yu-Gi-Oh shows, at least in the beginning so far. A lot of them have had a tendency to have fairly slow starts, whereas this has been very fast-paced, and at some points could even be made to be a little bit too fast-paced, but that's alright. I'd rather have something slightly over fast-paced than under fast-paced. So let's go ahead and jump into the episode after I've already rambled for about 2 minutes. So much as the summary seemed to indicate, this episode focuses primarily on Emma getting some character development in the beginning, and then the latter half being the start of her and Playmaker's duel. Now, the episode starts off with her in what seems to be like a hotel building room type of thing that's rather fancy and nice. She seems to have a good amount of privacy, it seems extremely clean, and just the way that there's not a lot of possessions around there very much comes across to me as like a hotel type of space. And if that is indeed the case, that also seems to indicate she makes a lot of money, which would make sense given that she's constantly referring to herself as a cyber treasure hunter, which is probably something kind of illegal given what our understanding of this so far is that more or less she goes exploring Vrains to gather things and collect information and sell it, basically the somewhat shady activities that she's been doing so far, which is borderline, if not totally illegal, which a lot of those types of things end up being highly profitable, but also run extremely high risk, which would explain why she has the money, and also why she seems to mostly keep to herself, yet at the same time we see her in public multiple times, so I wouldn't really consider her fully a criminal either, and I doubt Akira would be dealing with a criminal, because then it would put his job at stake working for Seoul when he's indicated that he really cares about keeping his job at Seoul in order to, provide for Aoi. So Emma's exact social status and wealth status aren't exactly totally clear yet, but moving on from that, she has an encounter with Akira in this episode, at which rate they begin to talk, and she's basically saying to him, Seoul seems so heartless, you basically protected their product being Link Vrains, yet they demoted your position anyway. And then he says he has no regrets, so more props to Akira. I mean, if you had any doubt that he cared about Aoi by this point, this definitely confirms that no, she is his number one priority, taking care of his younger sister, and that's very admirable in my mind. It's very reminiscent of the way Joey cared about Serenity and Duel Monsters to me. But he says he has no regrets about everything he did. He got what he needed to help Aoi from Playmaker, and that's all that matters. She then proceeds to ask him about the incident 10 years ago, once more showing how curious she is about it. And he says he knows nothing, at which rate he returns to her the same question, asking about 10 years ago, and she says she might know something, and he asks if she will share it. She said, well, are you willing to pay my price? And he said, and he just kind of stays silent, he rejects it, and she then begins to walk off, saying she has no interest in money or power. So, if nothing else, this once more confirms the fact that Emma seems kinda heartless to some extent, as of right now, and she doesn't seem to have much of a loyalty to anyone. I thought in the previous couple episodes, she was starting to show some loyalty to Akira. She sent a limo for him to go check on Aoi. She was very helpful during that whole situation, despite the fact that she was in some ways working against her employer in Seoul a little bit, given how they seem to be making a dividing line with Akira, yet she was still helping him. I thought maybe she was finally starting to show some loyalty to somebody. I say finally, but we're only 13 episodes in. Nonetheless, she's she seems really selfish at the moment. Now, it could be they're just trying to set up for a lot of character growth. I mean, a lot of people compare her to My Valentine, as do I, and Mai had a fairly similar track record, though I feel like she was a little bit softer to begin with. Emma's just outright manipulating, telling people off, and just showing no care at all. Mai seemed to open up a little bit and gradually towards these other people. She seemed to have a little bit of that aggression, but it was aggression in such a way that you could tell she was just frustrated that she didn't feel the same way about friends that, say, Joey did while she was dueling him. And as a result, she just wished she had closer friends the way he did, versus Emma just doesn't seem to care. She seems happy with her lone wolf lifestyle, she's continuing to pursue it. Of course, then again, she hasn't had an influence like Joey has yet either. I mean, Yusaku's not much better in terms of the lone wolf field other than Kusanagi. Outside of him, Yusaku's pretty much just been doing his own thing thus far. So it might take a while. Maybe she'll develop at the same pace Playmaker does. We'll have to wait and see on that. But going further into the time that's spent on Aoi here, she then proceeds to challenge Playmaker to a duel. And when Playmaker asks why she's so interested in dueling him when he goes to accept, she states that she wants the AI in order to sell it for a lot of money. Now, does that fit with her character so far? Yes, she does seem to be very interested in gaining money any way she can. She's trying to get a leg up on everyone, constantly gather information and turn it against people, hence why she said to Akira earlier in the episode, she likes having contacts all over the place, that way she's constantly aware of what's going on, and hence also the reason she's able to figure out a way to get to a backdoor within Soul Technology's security program. But on the opposite end of that, what we've been getting here recently is that, above everything else, she's really curious about what happened 10 years ago. I'm going to venture to say that Emma's curiosity might actually outweigh her greed at this point. And why do I say that? Well, yes, she's saying she wants the AI if Yusaku loses, but why might she want that AI other than to sell it? Then it's something to hold above Yusaku's head in order to get her what she wants. Or hold above Soul Technology's head in order to get her what she wants. Essentially, her problem at this point, at least from my perspective, is that she cannot get the information she wants from 10 years ago, and she knows that Soul will not provide it to her because everyone's being super secretive who knows anything about it. Revolver's not revealing anything, Soul Technologies doesn't seem to talk about it at all, they seem like scared by the fact that Akira might be figuring out something to do with it, and the rest of everybody else is either forgotten it like Yusaku has, or doesn't know anything to begin with. So by obtaining the AI, she can use it as essentially a bargaining chip in order to gain the information she wants from Soul. Because right now, she has the hacking abilities to get in through the back door, but she can't deal with the bloody data storm. It's standing in her way, and it seemed to have overwhelmed her computer to the point where she had to shut it down. And the other option would be, if Soul won't do anything for her, it could be that she also wants to win the AI because she knows Yusaku needs it just as badly. And what does she point out several times within this episode? Yusaku seems to have some influence over the data storm. She seems to take that into account on several occasions. Now, you could claim that she's just noting that to herself over and over again, so that way she's aware of storm access when she goes to duel him. But it's also possible that she's noting that over and over again because she believes if she can hold eye over Yusaku's head and get him to help her and share the information about 10 years ago with her, then he will be able to finish getting past the data storm. Because so far, data storms we've noticed can only be controlled by very certain people and seem to always be summoned by someone special too. The data storms we've seen so far, if my memory serves me right, have either been summoned by Ai in the first episode when he called upon one, and I think he assisted in calling upon the one in the duel against Revolver. So they've either been called upon Ai, Revolver through storm access, or Yusaku through storm access. So there's somebody else there, and it seems like in order to control said data storm, you need one of those three people, or if there is indeed another party that's creating the one that blocked her, one of those people as well in order to do it. So I'm saying her reasoning might be, get Ai, use it to control Yusaku to help her get past the data storm, then together they go in. If that is indeed the case, it paints another interesting possibility because those episode titles that indicate, yes, they go in through the back door of Soul, or Yusaku probably does, It might also mean that, yeah, Yusaku loses to Emma, but they still go through because Emma's forcibly controlling him with Eye. And as long as she has Eye, she doesn't have to give it to him. She can just keep controlling him and use Yusaku as a puppet. She also seems to have taken heavy interest in him as being a very interesting person, so she might figure being able to use him to her advantage just increases her possibilities by tenfold. Bit of a crazy theory, but I think there's some valid points that might lead in that direction. Personally, I would like to see the show go in that direction because I think it's a lot less expected, a lot less standard, and I think Vrains has broken enough traditions that it's not entirely beyond the realm of possibility. That about wraps it up in terms of my thoughts on what we got on Emma in this episode, so let's go ahead and cut to the scene where we have Playmaker inside of his house. Now, here we get another one of those potentially awkward scenes between Roboppy and I, at which rate, I don't know why they're throwing this in here, and I don't know how to feel about it, and if you totally don't know what I'm talking about, that's fine, please just leave it, don't investigate it further, but if you are catching on to what I'm saying, it just seems a little bit weird to be in a children's show that they're implying whatever that may be, at least in my eyes, and I just hope it's not something that's super heavily done. The light bits of it that's sprinkled in there with the robots is kind of okay, I guess, but just don't put it all over the place. It's going to get a little bit weird if you ask me, but to each their own, I suppose. The next scene, chronologically speaking, of interest to me is when we have Akira and Hayami standing within what seems to be Akira's new office, and they're referencing how no, Akira actually wasn't fired the way Soul Tech kept talking about doing, but instead he was demoted down to a rank called Chief. I honestly have no idea how high that rank is, but I find it interesting they kept Akira around, because so far the impression we've gotten of Soul Tech is they don't really care about anybody except themselves, and they seem fairly stone cold, so I doubt this was a generosity move towards somebody that they cared about. Oh, you've been a long-time employee, we'll keep you on board, but take this wrist slap and demotion as a sign that you need to stay out of trouble, mister. I think instead they probably found a use for Akira, and that's why they kept him around. Maybe they intend to use him as a manipulation tactic because they believe that, hey, Playmaker might have some emotional attachment to Blue Angel, who is Blue Angel's brother, Akira, so we can use him to maybe manipulate Playmaker since he seems so powerful. Or maybe they're going to use him in order to fight the Knights of Hanoi. I don't know. I just find it highly unlikely that this was a genuine show of care towards Akira and not something a lot darker, a lot more manipulative, the way Soul Tech has seemed to be so far, the way they're secretive about everything that happened 10 years ago, and just everything in general. Moving on from that, they also, both Akira and Hayami reference another person, and that's Kitamura, who took over Akira's old job. Kitamura just seems like an absolute jerk. He is yelling at his employees, telling them that he's going to reduce their salaries by 50% if they don't work faster and get the job done in time, when we can all clearly see by watching this, those employees are typing incredibly fast and hard at work to do what he wants done. And what does he want done? He wants an army of AI duelists created. Now, to me, this almost reminds me of when we had all the, Duel Chaser security people in Arc 5 during the Synchro arc, and they were being controlled by Rajay, and he was going to use them to help take over City. Part of me wonders if that's what Soul Tech has in mind. From what we've picked up so far, if you're hurting Vrains, some of that hurt, that pain and damage transfers over to the real world, just like if you get exhausted from doing a lot of actions. Yusaku's been getting exhausted in real life after doing numerous duels and those types of things. So couldn't they use this army that's being amassed to hurt their many participants in Link Vrains and use that force to control them in real life? It certainly seems like an evil scheme from a company that seems pretty cold so far, so I don't put it outside the realm of possibility at all. Heck, it might even be probable. Or maybe Kitamura's just super twisted and is kind of doing his own thing. Heck, maybe he's the next Rajay and he's going to end up turning against Soul Tech and doing his own thing that way. He seems pretty twisted in his own right and that he could do that type of thing on his own, maybe. Granted, we don't know a lot about him yet, so that's a bit of a stretch, but nonetheless. So having covered all of that, that pretty much just leaves us with the dueling portion of this episode, and I want to comment on Emma's Altergeist for a second here, in that they're primarily reminding me at this point, artwork-wise, sort of like the Venom archetype that Professor Viper used back in GX, artwork-wise. I don't know, just something about the multiple heads, I guess, reminds me a little bit of Venamanaga and them. But otherwise, they aren't reminding me of a ton. I am liking them. I think they have a neat look to them. The one she summoned that could do direct attacks, it only had 500 attack points. I liked how it sort of had a dolphin-shaped type of body. it was a neat overall effect. I'm liking the way she duels too, and then the fact that she's actually challenging Playmaker. I don't think if she does end up defeating him, as I proposed as being a possibility still in my earlier theory, I don't think if she's going to end up winning the duel, it will be right away, as the 30-second or so preview we got towards the end of this episode did seem to indicate the duel will be going on a little bit longer. There seemed to be like a red, boxy-ish looking Link monster that I would definitely not associate as being part of the Altergeist archetype, so I'm assuming that's something Yusaku summons. I'm wondering if maybe he pulls something from the Data Storm somehow to save him at the last second, or something like that. Either that or maybe like some sort of a hand trap card that he activates. But regardless, I don't think he's going to lose right away the way Emma intends, and that's going to end up turning into some sort of a struggle between whatever monster Yusaku's able to pull if he struggles through this, and Emma fighting him, or the fact that she's not able to finish him in one turn, but at the same time his life points are not low enough to activate his Storm Access ability, so maybe he's trying to lower his own life points to get below 1,000 life points, since she'll likely refuse to do any more damage until she can do it all at once, given how Emma seems to be paying a lot more attention to the fact that he has Storm Access than anyone he's dueled before. So far I'm liking her dueling a lot on the whole. So I think that about wraps up my thoughts on this episode. Be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Do you think there's still a chance Emma might win this duel? What is her objective? Is she actually after the money, or is the AI just going to be another bargaining chip for her? Or any other theories you may have. If you enjoyed this video, also be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you did not, constructive criticism is always welcome, and as always, have a nice day.